Hi, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Our title for this little chat is Synchronicity. It's one of my favourite words because it was by the famous, iconic psychologist, research psychologist, Carl Jung. And he coined the phrase, I believe, synchronicity, that nothing happens by accident. And I'm really convinced that this is absolutely true, hence that it is one of my favourite words. So I'm just looking at all of the things that have happened. For me, my spiritual journey is really quite important to me. It may be incredibly boring to other people, and of course for those people there's the next button, and you press next and you go on to another video. But for me, for the way that things have been happening, synchronicity really does match not just the psychological thing. It also matches what I think of as divine intervention. Now, it's for those people who are still arguing about whether I'm religious or not. I'm not organised religion, but I am spiritual, and to that degree religion has its own meaning for me. And I really do think that things happen for a reason, and I don't think too many things happen by accident. If you really look at it, you will be a magnet for those things, which possibly one way to look at it is that if there is divine intervention, which as I say I believe in very much, what will be happening is that you will make yourself, one way or another, at some level of awareness, you'll make yourself a magnet for the kind of experience that you need the most. I saw once a prayer that someone offered. They said, "Thank you, Lord, for not giving me what I want, but giving me what I need." And doesn't that sum up divine intervention? It does for me. And so what's happened that makes me think about synchronicity, divine intervention? Well, I had one book that was sent to me by Mr. and Mrs. O, I think. Well, it can only be the O's or the Beans, because they seem to send the most books. Having said that, I've just realised that maybe the book didn't come. Maybe it came from Buttercup, I think. Well, anyway, I read the book that was by a man who was he was an investigative reporter for the courts, and he investigated cases for various trials that came up. So if something came up and he was interested in it, he would actually talk to people about it, and he would do his own investigation. So he investigated, and one of the investigations that he decided upon, when he decided that he needed to look at his own spirituality and his own journey, he titled a book, he penned a book entitled The Case for Christ. And he had access, I recommend this book greatly, it had a huge effect on me, and explained and answered a lot of questions. And he was able, because of his contacts and his way of handling things, he was able to go ahead and secure interviews with some very prominent and extremely knowledgeable, educated, clever people on the subject of Christ, but who had always fascinated me anyway. So when I read that book, that had a huge effect on me. So there's synchronicity for one, in one way, that somebody happened to put a book into the box that they sent, and I received it, and I looked at that and read it, and I never put the book down until it was done almost. It's one of those things. Well, sure enough, another book that I got was the quotations book, And I read that and was very, very interested. Really knowledgeable, insightful quotations from some extremely clever people. So that was also there. Just came out of the blue. I didn't buy it, but I found it fascinating. Synchronicity. Nothing happens by accident. Somebody said, I think that Terence would like this book, and I'm going to put it in. Or maybe they said, I think you should read it. Well, when we went to see our friend Daryl, I went to see him in Cebu, and when we were leaving, he pressed a little parcel into my hand, and it was bound tight, so I couldn't actually see it. I'd have to make the effort to open it, and it was a book. Once again, synchronicity. It was a book, and it was a book about an author who actually used to be a shepherd. He was a shepherd, and he operated in Africa, I think in Israel. Very knowledgeable man, and he was knowledgeable on the Bible, which I studied some time ago, just as I met Beth. And I studied the Bible for my own interest, mainly because I was interested in the teachings of Christ. So you can see how synchronicity comes in for me on that. And what was interesting about this book was that he went into great details on one of the Psalms, and it was Psalm 23, which if I was asked to make a quote on it, it was the quote that said, let me see, lay me down in green pastures. And it turned out that all of those sayings which segment the psalm are all from the experience and the life of a shepherd. And the main person, the author of the psalm, is David. And lo and behold, David was a shepherd. So the author, who actually, he likened all of what he was trying to say about the psalm, and he put it into his own language, which actually turns out to be pretty close to what David, the author of Psalm 23, did. And so he explains a lot of the things which I, for one, had actually listened to and into, though I dwell in the valley of death, and he explained what that meant. And they were all like that. And at first I thought, I'm not going to enjoy this book. It's all about sheep. And then gradually I began to understand what the author was getting at. And it is called Psalm 23 from a shepherd's point of view. So a shepherd's point of view of Psalm 23. And if you're interested in having a look at books, personally, I find that books are a huge, huge motivator on thinking in a different way. And with a good author, you can learn a great deal, and even with a bad author, you can learn something. And usually, writers are responsible for some of the great thoughts of the world. There is no question about this, for my money, that if it were not for writers, we wouldn't have discovered half of what we've discovered now. So, synchronicity, nothing happens by accident. Thank you for those people who have given me the books that they have. You will know who you are, and I appreciate what I get so much, and I learn a huge amount. My education as a 15-year-old leaving school, I left St Wilfrid's Secondary Modern School in Hume, Manchester. Hume, a very poor area of Manchester, which anyway is an industrial town. And I left there with with what could very loosely be called an education, which has since been cobbled together from things that I've read, and it's nothing to write home about, believe me, but I've learned a lot from listening to people, and I've learned a lot from books that were recommended to me. At one time I decided it's about time that I did a lot of reading, and that was when the world was at an ebb for me. The pendulum had swung over, way over, and almost out of sight of the good stuff, I thought. And that led me to read, and I read, and I must have read 100 books. And I had one book which was short stories from all of the great authors, both American, from the world, American, Russian, British, a huge number of authors, and they had all contributed, either knowingly or unknowingly, but it was a compilation of short stories by great writers, and boy, I learned a lot. So that's all from me. It's a late night, and I thank you for looking in. Thank you for sharing these thoughts with me, and bye for now. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Please like, comment, subscribe. It's good to hear from you, and it actually helps Beth and I if you give a thumbs up, which doesn't take any commitment on your part at all. Bye for now.